Okay, I'm Ted Leverette, broadcasting from partneroncall.com. I'm the original business buyer advocate, and for more than 30 years, I've been helping people find and buy the right businesses the right way. I'm not a business broker. I don't represent sellers. And that's why today, we're also going to hear from the seller side of the deal-making table. We're going to hear how brokers are perceiving us, buyers, and how sellers are perceiving us. And you know, if you want to buy a business, you have to find the sellers. In a little while, you're going to hear from Henry Campbell-Jones. He's the managing director and founder of Hornblower Business Brokers Ltd. And he's going to share with us a few tips to help searchers who are wanting to buy a business. Hey, you know what? It's important that we, on the buy side, understand that brokers are gatekeepers. They're the gatekeepers to some of the best businesses for sale. And they're the people who create the buyer competition. So we need to impress brokers, and we need to do it up front, because if we do, it'll open some doors. And here's really the good news. If you can impress brokers, and by the way, they are rightfully cynical of searchers because most searchers don't have a clue and they drive everybody crazy. So when you impress a broker, you're definitely going to be welcomed by the sellers and the businesses for sale by owner. And that's important because if you can't find what you're looking for listed by brokers, you're going to have to go to the hidden market. And those are the businesses not for sale or the businesses that are for sale by owner. Hey, by the way, as you'll see, the people are logging in. We have people from all over the world, the UK, Australia, the United States, Canada. Sometimes we have people in from Africa and South America, so maybe they'll sign in. Our topic today is assessing and fine-tuning searcher deal flow. And if we can fine-tune your deal flow, make more of it and better of it, then we can influence the owners, the sellers, and the brokers. And why are we covering this topic? Somebody asked me. Well, because most searchers are missing out on the best opportunities. It's essential for searchers to get ahead of their buyer competition. Most searchers and wannabe buyers are ill-prepared, ill-informed, and poorly advised. They just don't know what they don't know. And guess what? That's good for the best prepared searchers because they're lousy buyer competition. They make us look better. So right now, let's set some reasonable expectations for what you're going to get today. I'm going to highlight what does not work. I'm not going to spew boilerplate ideas, you know, that kind of stuff, that generic information you can find online in the various searcher groups. To do it right, it takes personalization. So you're going to get some tips on that today. But your communications and your actions have to be personalized for you. Using what worked for somebody else is a good way to get nowhere fast. You know, I want to say that another way. It's not a good idea to follow the lead of people who are not succeeding in their search. It's not enough to find the opportunities. The proof is in the done deals. So don't be misled, please, by the search funders, for example, who tout big returns. You're only seeing the winners. I just saw a study yesterday and it talked about, oh, a 35% return per annum, multiply our money by 8 times. Well, those are the winners. Those are the minority, believe me. You're not seeing the losers. You're not seeing the well-meaning people who are inept. They're no good at it. They're wasting their time. They're wasting their money, not to mention their investors' money. They're chasing lost causes. Ignorant buyer competition offends brokers, owners, sellers, advisors, and even offends sources of financing. So you can work your way all the way through what you think is a deal. And when you apply for financing, if you're not able to show what the source of financing needs to see, no deal. That's not good for you who are properly prepared, because the more we have these people out there who don't know what they do, the more cynicism there is when buyers approach brokers and sellers. And that's why the first impression searchers make, it's got to be your best. There is very little opportunity to make a favorable impression if you blow it the first time. Trust me on that one. Word gets out that you just don't know what you're doing. Now, what about targeting? You know, in this economy, we're in the midst of the pandemic. We got a financial crisis worldwide. This is not my normal advice, but it is today. You need to focus heavily on brokers. They represent the low-hanging fruit. These are the people who have businesses for sale. They want to sell them right now. And the brokers are motivated more than ever to make deals because they want to get a commission. Going to owners is also important. Some searchers tell me, well, I'm afraid to go to owners. They're too scared. Well, yeah, they are scared, and you should be too. But if we properly approach owners, and I know it because I have clients right now doing it, when we properly approach owners who are scared to death, maybe their business is closed, they hope to reopen, but they just don't have what it takes to go through the reopening or maybe a whole year of struggle. They are very amenable to doing deals as long as they're fair deals. This is not what we're going to cover today, how to do the fair deals. We did that in the last couple of these events. Contact me privately if you want more insight on that. The other place to go are sources of referrals. You got lawyers and accountants and business appraisers twiddling their thumbs. They're working at home. This is a good time to talk to them about what you're trying to accomplish. They may know of an owner who doesn't want to go back to work or is working in an essential business and would love to meet a buyer, a real buyer, who's going to come in and do the kind of deal where maybe the owner stays on for a while and everybody carries the business forward, everybody makes more money. It's not a good idea to practice, though, your pitch to brokers, sellers, and sources of referral. They're looking for people who know what they're doing. They're under stress. They don't have time for people who are just winging it. So on timing, yeah, right now I say be out searching, but just do it carefully and immediately avoid the losers. Maybe back in the good old days, that was only 3 months ago, we could play with some losers and looking for turnaround potential. Just forget about it. There are just too many absolute stone cold winners out there right now that are fairly priced with great financing from owners if you properly approach them. So dump all the losers. Here's what you should be screening up front for: seller flexibility. I'm talking about pricing the business for sale. I'm talking about the seller financing or deferment if you're in the UK. I'm talking about the terms of the purchase contract. We're getting some really interesting contracts written now. Sellers want to sell, brokers want to earn commissions, buyers want to get a done deal. It's also time to nail owners down for transition. You can get better transition assistance after completion now than you could have 4 months ago. It's what it takes to get a deal. And what about reps and warranties? Well, I hope we have at least one lawyer tune in. I hope that person will speak up. But if not, just realize that you need legal counsel who can properly handle reps and warranties. We covered this in my last open mic session last Wednesday. So keep in mind one more time that first impression, it could come from social media. So how you appear on the internet is really important. And we'll talk more about that later. Okay, in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to tell you about some of the self-defeating materials and messaging and documents that some of the searchers have shared with me in the last couple of years. I mean, the kinds of things are showing brokers and owners and sellers. And the purpose is to establish their credibility. But guess what? It is not a pretty picture. Bad news. All of us have a BS meter, don't we? The brokers and owners are using their BS meter when they're approached by people purporting to be qualified to find businesses, evaluate them, negotiate, and then buy and manage these small and mid-sized businesses. But most of them don't have those qualifications. That's why you see that meter running hard. And then if there's buyer competition, and by the way, there almost always is buyer competition, you may not know about it, the best deals are offered to the best searchers. And the only way to know if you're the best searcher is, well, you could go out and practice on the playing field and wonder why you're not seeing things. In fact, you won't even know. Or you go to people like me who do this every day and you let us evaluate what you're doing, and then you go out and do it better. Now, we're going to cover every single thing that goes in a searcher marketing plan today. I'm not going to give you every tip you need to make a beautiful one, but I will show you what goes wrong, and I'll give you some tips about how to point your nose in the right direction. There are rarely second chances. I said it earlier, I'm saying it again. In this economy, owners and brokers in particular are too afraid, people who just don't know what they're doing. Searchers have been coming to me for this for decades. It was about 2 years ago that I started stumbling across all these websites and LinkedIn profiles for these groups of searchers who were sort of self-helping one another. And I was just so utterly amazed at how naive they were that I realized maybe I ought to just start offering a dedicated program. So you're looking at it. Those are the things that go in a plan, every single one of them. If you're missing any one of them, you don't have a winning plan. So we're going to go down the list. We begin with asking 2 questions. How well, remember, I'm talking to buyers in this program. I understand we have owners and advisors, brokers, and others, and they're here because they want to see how we smart buyers are thinking, how we're behaving. So this is for you, searchers. I ask you, you should ask yourself, how well are you selling yourself to owners and sellers of companies? In other words, if you owned a business and someone approached you the way you're approaching them, would you be just totally blown away and say, oh boy, I can't wait to talk to this searcher to buy my business? And the second question we ask is, how well are you selling yourself to lenders and investors? You've got to be able to do that up front. My clients, I should have some signed in right now, they know that they need to know who their source of financing and investors are before they begin their search. So every searcher I'm working with right now already has had conversations with SBA lenders in America, investors in the UK and Australia. They need to know where the money's coming from, because part of selling yourself to the brokers and owners is they want to know, where's the money? So you got to be able to show them that. So what we do is we try to fix what's broken, and then we add what's missing. There's the list. The better you market yourself, the more the owners are going to want to sell their company to you. And it's going to be easier to get the money you need for the deal. Disappointment, frustration, it's normal. It's normal for people trying to find worthwhile businesses to buy, but it's mostly unnecessary. We don't have to be as disappointed and frustrated, even right now during the crises. Look, it's sad and it's true. The people out there that are hopeful about searching for businesses, they have defective search methods. It's just that simple. The tools they're using don't work. And of course they suspect it, but they just don't know why. They just know they're not getting the deal flow, or they're not being taken seriously. And one of the things we see right up front is they've misallocated their deal-making funds. I can't tell you how many times I get hired and somebody tells me, when we're talking about their acquisition criteria, the size and type of deal they want to do. And in that first minute, I say to them, impossible, just never going to happen. Never going to happen. You don't have the money lined up. You don't have the money up front. We need to change your criteria. Oh boy, big surprise. And then we got to change their adjustment objective, their return on investment. Because what? We're looking into marketplace realities. So you can't do this stuff in a vacuum. You either understand what's going on in that marketplace, or you have somebody on your team who does. Remember, you don't get second chances when you mess up with brokers and sellers. You're not going to get a second chance to go back as a new improved searcher. So you got to get this criteria down, and we'll talk more about that. So in other words, what we're trying to do, we're trying to discover early where we're going to get the blowback. Now let's look at some of the most common mistakes. Number one, what you say first to brokers and owners and sellers, I'm talking about your answers to the questions that brokers and sellers are using to screen you, to evaluate your credibility. I'm talking about the first words that you voice or write to brokers, owners, and sellers. Think about advertising. That 30-second commercial you see on TV, that's what you have to have, because that's about all the time you have to make the first best impression. Look, never forget, brokers and sellers are judging you in comparison to all the other searchers. Brokers are not lying when they say they have 10 to 15 searchers looking at every listing, even their lousy listings. Searchers are a dime a dozen. Buyers are a little more rare. You're being judged against all of them. So one of the things that I see is, what's in it for me? The searcher's number one problem, I think, is everything you see on that list of 10 is all written from their point of view. And who gives a, well, whatever. What sellers and brokers want to hear is what's in it for them. So you got to tweak all that information so it begins with what's in it for them. Even when I see searchers who have given me written information or the verbal scripts they're using, where they somewhat cover what's in it for them, the other side, the sellers, it's poorly expressed. It's poorly written. It's like watching a B movie or a C movie, a lousy movie. The script might have been good, but if it's poorly expressed, guess what? No Academy Award. So one of the things we do right up front with clients is first of all, we give them about 40 questions and we rehearse them. And we'll talk about a few of those in a few minutes. We rehearse them until they get it right. And that means a lot of editing, needs a lot of role playing. We do it with Zoom because, look, you're going to be talking to people. You better look good while you're talking. Okay, what about pitch decks? This one is so damn laughable to me when I go to these searcher online venues. You know, this is that thing, that written presentation that people use in face-to-face meetings, or they post it on their website, or they mail it. Guess what? This can, and it usually does, blow up on searchers. So look, you're at step number 2 and it's over. If you're not a proven deal maker, you may appear pretentious or foolish to owners and brokers if you brandish the kind of really beautiful boilerplate pitch decks you see thrown around the internet. Hey, listen, selling yourself, it's a real good idea, but overselling your capability is not. So don't pretend with your pitch deck that you're some investment fund or private equity group when you're working out of your home. You look like a fool. Now, what we do when somebody sends me these, and they're pretty good, is we just get rid of the pitch deck idea and we blend it into the rest of the items I'm about to talk about. And that's what sells. Now, what about acquisition criteria? You see, it's number 3 because if we can't get this right, the rest of the steps are going to fail. Over the decades, I have never seen acquisition criteria that was sufficiently realistic. I'm not being arrogant here. It's just never been good enough. Searchers know the best way to explain their criteria. It's not enough that you can convince me and your accountant on your acquisition criteria. You better be able to express that in a way that's very likable to brokers and owners. And they're going to ask you about that right up front. Okay, there's Henry Campbell-Jones. He's from Hornblower Business Brokers over in many locations in England and in Ireland. Talk to us a little bit about this acquisition criteria. From a broker's point of view, what we need to know to look good to you.
Yes, we deal in main on the sales side. So when buyers sort of register with us, we like to get down into the detail of what they're looking for so that we can send them the right opportunities. And I think one of the key things is to decide what sector you're looking for. Unless you're a trade buyer or an individual with a certain experience, industry experience, a number of investors like to register with us, saying that they're, I think the phrase is, sector agnostic. Anything that will get a good return and has a strong balance sheet and yes, can be financed is often expressed. I think the first one of those is to really know what sector you want to focus on. And whilst you might be open to a number of different sectors, I think when you register with brokers for opportunities, I think it's quite important for us to be able to help to specify which one and be quite focused on what you're looking for in terms of the sector. Is it engineering? Is it IT support or a managed services type of business? And then you can get the right opportunities sent your way. All buyers want a good return, but it's a question of sizing up what is your funding, how you're looking to fund, what cash reserves you have, and therefore what size of deal you're looking for. Then I think equally important, I think as Ted's really said already, is you need to give yourself credibility. Unless you're a trade buyer where you obviously do have the right industry experience, you need to demonstrate that you do have experience in the sectors that you're looking for, both in terms of sort of knowledgeable about the industry, but have had, I guess, a reasonable level of senior experience, whether it be within a corporate or another firm, that backs up your credibility to be able to run a small business.
You know, one of the things that I remind the buyers who hire me, usually they'll say up front, hey, I'm interested in anything. Well, I say, good. I'm the last person who ever hears that sentence. Don't say that to brokers and sellers. You need to make them think when you're talking to them, that's the one you want to marry. Most of the buyers I represent pick maybe, a half dozen categories of businesses they're interested in. And in those categories, they'll be lucky if they interview 5 or 10 companies that are worth buying. Now they're going to come across dozens, but maybe 5 or 10 worth buying. But it might not be a perfect match. Well, if you blow through those 5 or 10, it's over. Methodology, I'm talking about the process. I'm talking about the timing and the targeting and the follow-up scripts, the verbalization you're using. Just about every searcher I've seen is winging it. They're practicing on the playing field. And guess what? They're hoping they get it right. And they're hoping that maybe they're learning from mistakes. But guess what? Not a good place to practice. Good way to let searchers get in front of you. Now, these are the actual tools: prospecting letters, communication scripts, the kind of pitches you're putting on social networking. This is where most searchers go backwards. They get everything right, maybe, and especially if they're working with me, on that first 4, and then they blow it right here. This is when you're stepping out for the first night, opening night for your show. So if you don't get the timing right, the script can be right, but if the timing's wrong, it looks kind of bad, like a lousy play or a crummy movie. And if you don't follow up at the right timing, it doesn't work. And if you're on the wrong venue, some searchers push their best reach out where it shouldn't be done first. It needs to be on every venue possible. That's true. And if you have a job, for example, and you have to cover your search, well, it still needs to be on every venue. We just have to screen you. And we have ways to do that to hide your real identity until the appropriate moment. And of course, if the appearance of the materials are not the best they can be, well, game over. I can count on one hand the number of resumes I've seen in the last decades that have been adequately crafted to appeal to brokers and sellers. These are basically the really wonderful recipe, yeah, I guess you could call it that, resume that searchers use to get their last job or two. So yeah, the boss liked it, they got hired. That format doesn't work very well, so we have to recook it later. I'll talk more about that. Remember, we're gonna go back to every one of these with some tips. Right now, I'm just showing you the big no-nos. This online presence, it needs to be there. Guess what? If I Google any one of you, I find you. And guess what? It's not a real pretty picture sometimes. Everybody Googles. So that means don't let whatever they're going to find about you not lead them in the direction you want them to go. So if you're searching for a business to buy, the first thing that pops up on Google better have something to do with why you're somebody who should be paid attention to in the realm of searching for businesses to buy. If we see your soccer team award, pictures of your cute kids, your mugshot, none of that stuff is going to help you. But people who don't have a clue, they're just not worth the time. Guess what? Brokers and sellers are thinking that. So we spend a lot of time doing this, and I have to argue with every one of my clients about it. Believe me, it's no fun to pretty that up, but you got to do it. I put a lot of time in it. Why? Because it's all over right there, unless you get it right. Now, if you do get it right, and you've met an owner, and maybe there's a broker involved, there's something called a letter of interest. Google it. There's endless information written by lawyers and other people about letters of interest. This is a casual document. It just basically says, you know what, I like your daughter enough where I'd like to ask her out for a date. It doesn't go beyond that, like, let's say, letters of intent do. What we're just trying to let the owner know is, hey, you seem to have what I want, and you told me I seem to be bringing to the table what you want. Could we have a couple of conversations just where we get a little deeper? Oh, and yes, good, because we're going to go with an NDA. Of course, you're going to be asked to sign one-sided NDAs. Think about mutuality.
I'm Nancy Fallon-Houle. I'm the owner of Velocity Law, a small business law firm in Downers Grove, Illinois, which is a Chicago suburb. On the NDA, it's so important to read it. You don't have to necessarily ask your lawyer to give you their templates, but ask for the document that you're receiving in Word, not in PDF, so you can edit it. and read the NDA, because I have a story about an NDA that I've told Ted before. A broker wrote the NDA. The NDA gave the seller's intellectual property in a breakup to the broker just because it was poorly written, copied from probably a consultant agreement where if we break up, consultant gets the IP. The broker in this case got the seller's IP if the deal was breaking up, which is just crazy. That would have been an arrangement between the buyer and the seller, not the broker and the seller. So just read them and make sure every word is relevant and, of course, written in plain English. And if something doesn't sit right with you in an NDA, edit it in the Word document.
It's a big mistake to submit a letter of intent, or in the UK, heads of terms, too soon. Most LOIs and heads of terms that I've seen are too dangerous for searchers to sign. And if you're, again, copying it from some search sharing site, big mistake. Now, this week, I had an interview a couple days ago with legal counsel, and we'll publish that interview sometime in the next few days, and we talk about that, LOIs and NDAs. Henry, I think you had something else you wanted to talk about.
Yes, it was a quick note on sort of letters of intent or heads of terms. These are, when we put together, they dot all the I's and T's of what's been agreed in the discussions to date, and really set the scene for the transaction process for the lawyers to use to draw up the contracts. So it is quite an important document to get right, and there's always a balance between getting every detail in there that a lawyer is going to get in, and getting the crux of the deal and the main impetus of the deal. At the same time as getting to heads, this is when we ask buyers to show their proof of funds. It's at this point, once the heads of terms are signed, that's when everyone starts spending money on lawyers and due diligence. And so it's important that for a seller, that they know that there's a good prospect of the deal getting done. And whilst we will have done a certain amount of qualifying in the steps to get to this point, it's really at heads of terms that you have to show where the money is coming from and demonstrate. And the key is to be open from the start how you're going to fund each portion of the deal. Even if you're at a stage where that might change during the process, during due diligence, you might change your funder. But if you don't start off being open about how you intend to fund, then you lose credibility with the seller. And it's about creating an open relationship with the seller where he trusts what you're doing.
Okay, now if we've done all 9 of those things right, where some broker says, okay, let's do it, or an owner for sale by owner says, okay, let's proceed. Right from the beginning, you need to have a way to measure the response rate when you're searching and the worthiness of the responses, because that's, as we're going along, how we're adjusting our acquisition criteria and all these other factors, the other 9. We're measuring what we're doing, because as someone said, if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. So don't run blind. Oh, and one more thing, except for the owners wanting to offload their lousy business on ignorant buyers, you don't expect the sellers and brokers to do business with you. If they have a lousy business, well, they might if you're not prepared. But if you are prepared, they probably won't even show you those lousy businesses. They'll cut right to the chase, the good stuff, because they know you'll buy it. You'll buy it. This sort of relates to what Henry said. You need to hire the right advisory team. I beg, sometimes threaten my clients, my buyer clients, to identify a team that I have had some say in at the time they hire me. My feeling is there's no reason to even begin to search. If you don't know who your winning legal counsel is, your winning accounting counsel. You need to know who those people are, and they need to be proven deal makers, not the deal killers. They need to be known to help deals go forward, because all deals stumble. Even wonderful deals stumble. So you got to have the right team. And that's where this letter of intent and heads of terms will really pay off. Because if you get that right, you won't piss off brokers and sellers. You'll cover your own, you'll protect yourself, as well as not go too far with the other side. Don't forget, later you're going to have a chance to get a little more specific when you get the contracts of purchase. Now let's talk about the contracts, excuse me, the documents. I'm going back to number 1. And I'm going to get into more detail. That was a big picture. I'm looking at actual documents here. Number 1, well, what do you say first to brokers? I told you from the beginning, most of them don't get it right. Here are the first 4 or 5 questions that owners and sellers ask. Now, it might not be the first 4 or 5 questions they say to you, but they are definitely the first 4 or 5 really important questions. So the smart sellers and brokers sort of sandwich these in a conversation so you don't know you're being interrogated. This is a big one. Every time I practice this one with my own clients, I know some of you listening, I tripped you up. I'm now giving these people warning. Owners say, or brokers say, why did you contact me? Well, you better have a really good 5 or 10 word answer. And then they'll say, well, why did you choose me? Why did you choose my company? In other words, what's the interest in maybe wanting to buy my business or invest in it? Oh, another one. It's a great one. Everyone uses to screen out searchers. Are you talking to my competitors? Oh boy, if you blurt out yes, well, could be the end of the game. If you blurt out no, your credibility may be at question. So we spend a lot of time crafting an honest answer that keeps the ball going forward. How about this? Are you employed now? Just think about why they're asking that. You got to get the right answer. You give up negotiating advantages if you get that one wrong. Who will help you evaluate my business? Remember, nobody likes do-it-yourselfers. I mean, nobody. So if your resume and everything about you shows that you read a book last week and you belong to a searcher group online, and that's your extent of who's going to help you evaluate the business, you got to be a really dumb owner or broker to play ball with you. We personalize 40 questions. Remember I talked about this earlier? You need to show what you bring to the table up front. And yeah, it's your money, but you really need to focus on what's in it for me. And when I say me, I don't mean you. I mean what's in it for the broker and the seller and their employees and their customers. All that stuff's got to be spoken of very early to make you so attractive to the other side of the deal-making table. So you got to show it. You got to show it early. You need to protect it. That's where you have to have the right kind of NDA. So when you're spitting out stuff about you and your plans, it stops with whoever you're talking to. And you need to get something in return. When you hand somebody a resume, you need something back. When you hand somebody your financial statement or any evidence of your management capability, you need to get something back in return. This is where your advisory team comes in. When you brandish your good team, you need to say, and who are you using? And no laughing when you get the response. So please, no me, 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 me. How about the pitch deck? All right. I mean, some of these are so ugly. They're so unbelievably ugly. I don't know where some graphic design, maybe they went to some of those people online that sell their time and they're in the design business. But some of these things are so incredibly ugly to look at, you don't even want to read them. But worse, they're missing elements. There's certain things that belong in pitch decks. Now remember, pitch deck doesn't really have to be that written presentation that you see online when you click pitch deck. But the elements of good pitch decks are absolutely vital, and the way they're expressed are absolutely vital. So you can suck out that really good stuff. It just doesn't have to go on a one-page pitch deck. Another mistake is too many elements. I saw an 18-page pitch deck the other day. Oh my God, I don't know when the hell would spend time on it. And it looked like crap too, by the way. It had too many words, and they were the wrong words. It had unreasonable analysis and had unreasonable forecasting. Hey, you're giving these pitch decks to people who are in the industry. They're brokers, they're owners of companies, or they're investors. You better be pretty good at the analysis and forecasting. And guess what? I rarely see any pitch decks that show evidence for the forecast. So, I mean, why would anybody take that seriously? So poorly designed and poorly written, well, you know, that's just not enough. The other thing that these people do with pitch decks is they give it to the wrong audience. You don't want that floating everywhere. or they give it to the wrong audience. They give it to the right audience, but at the wrong time. There's some relationship building that needs to occur before you slam a pitch deck at somebody. Okay, listen, this is a good one. You're not going to want to believe this, but it's true. A recent pitch deck delved so deeply into the pandemic and the financial crisis that it, no surprise, scared off investors, and it scared off sources of referral to sellers. So yeah, we might want to address the pandemic and financial crisis, but you better not overplay it. And guess what? These pitch decks live forever. So when you pass those things out, they're out there forever. If it's on the internet, it's forever. So if 8 months from now, you would have rewritten that pitch deck not to delve so much on the horrible financial crisis and the pandemic, guess what? You've already tainted your market and you can't get it back. So we got to focus on good news in these pitch decks. Good, honest news, transparency, authenticity. What I see is these pitch decks lose focus on the good news. They lose focus on the illegitimate opportunity. Now, everything I'm saying about pitch deck, you realize this is part of the way you answer questions. This is part of how you question other people. Another self-defeating tactic, I crossed my heart and hope to die. I saw this about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. This was in a pitch deck, and it was sent to me, unsolicited, by the way. And he said, in his first interactions, in his pitch deck and in his verbal script, he says, you cannot rely on me to be available during due diligence, during deal making, or for full-time management, and after closing, because I have some serious personal and family problems, but I'm a really good searcher, and I'll land a company, and I'll be able to provide oversight to whatever management's in there. The chances of this guy getting funded, I don't think it's real good. Now, how about acquisition criteria? You need to tell the good news story, but it's got to relate to the target businesses. So if you've been in, well, let's say you've owned a chain of bed and breakfasts, and now you want to buy a metal fabrication company, you better show a bridge between what you've done to where you want to go. And if you don't do that persuasively, right up front in your resume and in your acquisition criteria, as Henry said a moment ago, no one's going to take you seriously. And you've got to be able to, in your acquisition criteria, not talk about, but show the cash you have, not only for the down payment, but for a contribution of working capital, and to fund your team, and a reserve fund for when things go wrong, and they will in that first 30 to 60 days. You're going to need to dig in your pocket. So if you don't have the cash, or you can't prove the borrowing power, or you don't have an investor that's absolutely stone cold committed that will show those deep pockets, why would anybody talk to you? Nobody wants to see your pro forma stuff either, by the way. And if you're going to show people pro formas in your acquisition criteria, it better be consistent with industry statistics. And those are readily available. We can find out what typical balance sheets and profit and loss statements look like for every single industry out there, and we can compare. So if we are making forecasts when we're talking to people or reviewing their business, we're doing it on the basis of what's actually happening in the industry. The other thing that goes wrong in the acquisition criteria, and it's why most searchers die right here, is they get unrealistic pricing multiples. Let's just say that business brokers are not where you go for pricing multiples, okay? Business brokers have multiples they use to list businesses for sale, but that's not necessarily what you need to know about buying businesses. So when you're building your acquisition criteria, you need to ask your advisor, let's say it's me, Ted, for that particular kind and size of business, no matter what the asking price is, what is the most likely range that will be considered reasonable for me to make an offer? And as long as you stay within that reasonable range, even if it does not agree with the asking price, they'll keep talking to you. But if it's outside that range, why would they talk to you? One of the things I notice, referring to number 4 here, methodology, is incongruity, not being consistent. And these 10 things, sometimes I get packages from searchers where, let's say, I would give a C+ to almost every item on that list, but 2 or 3 items say that are not consistent. So your story needs to be consistent. So at least look for incongruity when you're saying your piece. These brokers and sellers, they're taking notes. It's not what you searchers believe. It's what your targets perceive and believe. And that's why this packaging is so important. If you don't get the packaging right and you're not consistent in what you say, it's going to be like rowing a boat with one oar. Lots of effort, you don't get far. So one more time, you need to speak upfront in ways that go to the self-interest of brokers and sellers. This is not saying you give up your side, but you focus on what's good for them. So they see you want to play ball with them, play catch with them. Ball goes back and forth. Now, what about search tools? Well, one of the things I see in search letters is the first sentence is I, kiss of death. The other first word, we, kiss of death. My clients know that if I see any paragraph in a verbal script or a search letter or online that word begins with the word I, they're going to see it trashed by me. What's in it for me? Everything needs to go from the point of view of who you're trying to influence. The other thing that people do in their search tools, their prospecting letters, and I see it in their LinkedIn pros, they go overboard to describe their, guess what? Acquisition criteria. Well, that's a really dumb thing to do. Oh, they're told by some of these people on the search groups, well, you really want to limit the people who are going to waste your time. So be very definitive on what you want and don't want. No, don't do that at all. If you want to buy a metal fabrication plant within 50 miles of Newark, New Jersey, that's what you say. And you say, and it needs to have a taxable profit, between $500,000 and $1 million, and then shut up. Because if you say anything else, the sellers and brokers will screen themselves out. Save the discussion of your criteria in a quiet conversation with an NDA with brokers and owners. And that's when you begin to delve more deeply. But don't you talk first. Ask questions, find out what they have, and if it's what you like, play to what they're saying. Remember, whoever says it first, no, I know, I just posted it today. The early bird gets the worm. The early worm gets eaten. Search letters and scripts are not the time to be overly discriminating. Your objective is to get an interview. Your objective is to get a response. Hey, I got this thing from this guy. He's showing me he's worthwhile. My business seems to fit his criteria, because you haven't told them that much. I think I want to talk to this searcher. One of the things that I do, if I do searches for clients and some of the people who do the kind of work I do that I've trained over the decades, they don't call themselves business buyer advocates because I don't license people to use that term very often. So you don't know I've trained them. But one of the things that they do when they're searching on behalf of buyers, they'll put something really nice in the search letter, in the envelope. Right now, for example, I'm running something online during the crisis. It's called 120 Lifelines for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses. And in there are, 120 ways that owners of businesses tomorrow morning can increase cash flow. Tomorrow morning. They don't need to apply for the money. They don't have to borrow the money. They don't have to ask for permission. They just have to open up this damn booklet. It's about 60 pages and pull out the easiest ones and implement them this week. What we do is we throw a link to that report in the search letter. And guess what? Owners click it and read it and they go, hey, here's a guy wanting to buy my business. And apparently he researched me, and I hope he did. And he's offering something helpful. So he's showing from the beginning that this is going to be a relationship. Boy, that stuff really pays off. Sometimes we just put a magazine article in. Hey, did you see this from your industry trade association of 2 months ago, showing how the businesses are recovering because of the crisis? So we just copy it and stick it in the envelope. Now, what about resume? We already talked about the content just not being right if it's what you use for a job. We have some really pretty ways that we like to format resumes. There's a format right now being shared all over the internet by searchers. These are the people who are failing, but they all use the exact same format. And it is so boilerplate and it looks just so ordinary. So let's say I'm an owner and I'm looking to sell my company to somebody who's going to come in and be the fresh broom, maybe do things a little better, maybe polish it. And I get some boilerplate resume, even if the content is right, but it looks so ordinary. Is this the way this guy's going to manage my company? He's just going to take whatever I have and run with it. So take some time to make it look pretty. Remember the bridge. You got to bridge your capability to your target companies. This means my clients have 4 or 5 resumes. That's why we don't put resumes online. I mean, they may do it, but it's against my advice. You get the resume for your business because we wrote it for you. And the script we use with you is for your industry. So remember, what are resumes? They're marketing pieces. They're not lectures. They need to show your accomplishments. So forget the job title crap. Forget all the descriptions of everything you ever did. Accomplishments: increased revenue by X amount, lowered turnover by, settled a lawsuit. I mean, whatever was a major accomplishment, that's what people want to see. They don't want to just see somebody who can manage what is. Now, that online presence, it really needs to be there, even if it doesn't pertain to your search. So you need to go clean it up. Get rid of stuff. I had a client, when we Googled him, something came up. It definitely wasn't good. Well, it wasn't him. So we made sure that got out of there by complaining to the place where it was. I've had other clients have stuff that is about them, and it's not good. You got to get that out of there. And if you can't get it out of the first page results, then you got to do what I tell my people to do. Write articles, do a lot of posting, do stuff so when someone clicks your name or however else you're promoting yourself online, you fill up that first page of search results, because hardly anybody goes by that. Remember, you got to tell the same story the same way all the time, and you got to tell it to sell it. Remember, it was Andrew Carnegie. What did he say? Sell the sizzle, not the steak. You got to sell the deliverables, the desire. And this is what goes wrong. So many searchers do sell the deliverables, what they bring to the table, but they don't sell the desirable deliverables, what the broker and the owner most wants. So don't throw the kitchen sink in. Okay, that letter of interest, remember I talked a little while ago about resumes and other things. Don't be too limiting on what it is you're trying to find. And no legal jargon. So I think it's a good idea. In fact, I recommend that my clients get a letter of interest written by their lawyer. It is no more than 1 page. It passes the likability index. Likability index. It has no legal jargon. It does not sound or look like an LOI or a head of terms. You're just trying to say, you know what, I like what I see. Could we talk about it? Casual, friendly. Now, number 9, this is where the tires hit the pavement. It's sad and true. Nearly every NDA that you're going to see is not good for you. It's good for owners, maybe good for brokers. It's not good for you. So if I were you, I'd get your legal counsel to prepare an NDA, or at least clauses you'll hand to whoever hands you allows the NDA that's mutual. So for example, right now, I'm representing people out of the country. The people I'm representing out of the United States are all willing to be known. One owns a business, so he's a trade buyer. He's going to grow through mergers and acquisitions. And another guy is already known because he's done deals. So he doesn't mind the world knowing. But I have 4 searchers right now in the United States who are employed in very high level, very sensitive jobs, and they cannot afford for the word to get out. They can't even afford for anybody to know they're searching. So we have to conceal their identity for a while, and everything we do has to protect them. So in their NDA, assuming they're doing what I'm telling them to do, asking them to do, it needs to say specifically, you shall not tell anybody that we've even had this conversation, or that I'm on looking for a business. And you definitely won't tell anybody in your industry, because some owners like to tell their buddies that you're in their industry. Or what about your financial statement? As Henry said earlier, the way you're going to finance this deal is probably going to change even after you do the heads of terms or LOI. So you got to be careful what you show, and there needs to be flexibility, but you don't want that thing farmed around out there. That's what the NDA covers, and then so does your LOI. The other thing that we see in these NDAs and LOIs, besides legal jargon, I know there has to be some, but at least you should be able to understand it. So get rid of the ambiguity. So what you say when you're screening your legal counsel, hey, can you show me an NDA, a heads of terms, a letter of intent, and a contract of purchase that I could read? I won't take it. Can you just show it to me right now in your office? Let me see if I can understand it. Because see, if it's so full of legal jargon and you have to ask for a clarification on every paragraph, I am telling you, you're going to really piss off brokers and sellers. So look at all the time and money you put in with people like me, lawyers, accountants, maybe a business appraisal. You're right up here. You're going to go into deep due diligence. Financing is ready to go. But you provide legal documents that won't fly. We just wasted time and money. We already talked about response rate. You really need to keep track of it. Okay, look, we've been going for, I don't know, a while. I'm going to give you a tip worth repeating. Those of you who've heard this, if you've tuned in, I'm going to say it again because buying a business is all about search. Because if you can't find it, you cannot buy it. And it's about being best and first. First on scene with sellers, first on scene with brokers, and being their first choice. And you need to be top of mind. They need to be thinking about you. So it's not a one-time flying out and getting acquainted. You got to stay in touch. Don't wait for them to come back to you. And most of all, try to avoid buyer competition. But if you can't, you got to be able to beat them. Otherwise, guess what? You have to outbid them, which is a good way to pay more than a business is worth. Call me. Let me review your marketing plan. Let me help you fix it, improve it. Read my book, How to Prepare Yourself and Find the Right Business to Buy. You're going to get tons more insight than what I've covered today. And then if you get involved in reviewing a business, read my other book, How to Buy the Right Business the Right Way. You're going to see how we do it, how the smartest buyers actually do deals without blowing themselves up. Then call me and I'll help you deploy this stuff. So you'll save time, you'll save money, you will make better deals. But you've got to do what the savviest buyers do. So I hope this was useful. You can get more information at my website, partneroncall.com. I'm Ted Leverette, the original business buyer advocate with Partner on Call Network. I'm thanking you for listening. Okay, well, I'm Ted Leverette at Partner on Call Network. If you haven't read my how-to books, do it. They will help you. Saying goodbye. Thanks for listening. Tune in every Wednesday between now and the end of May. We're done.